look after myself first, get my confidence back, and then I know I can add more value back into the family. So that's where it kind of started. It was a difficult um, journey, because you have a lot of hesitations. You don't know where you're going to belong, because I was going to come back in the industry after 9 years. Technology has changed, people have moved on. There's younger blood who's ready to put longer hours. Yes. So there is, I'm sure Nusrat has her take on it also, but you start second guessing yourself and trying to say, will I fit in? But yeah, you once you start uh, you put your ego aside and you start trying out small things. The question here is to start, you put things in motion, and then eventually you will find your footing. But you have to get that get out of that comfort zone and put yourself out there. Be ready to hear the rejections, because they're bound to happen. People are out there who will try and take advantage of the fact that you took a break. But yeah, it's a huge learning, but it's extremely satisfying when you look back on your journey.
So let me ask this question to Nusrat, building on what Sharmila just said. Nusrat, is it really true that women who return to workplace after prolonged absence experience fear, discomfort, shame, confidence loss, and worry? Did that happen to you, though it happened to Sharmila? Nusrat, you're on mute. Please unmute yourself.
Yeah. So, let me put it like this, that, there are two ways that you kind of, when you come back to work, there are two things that happen simultaneously. One is that, at the back end, where you have your family and your, your other, your society, your expectations that you are supposed to fulfill. So there are apprehensions on that side. Am I doing the right thing? Will I be able to do all of this? Am I going to be a good mother, a good wife, a good daughter, and all of that? The second is, when you come back to work, people, of course, look at you not so seriously. And, they're not sure whether, you will really be kind of able to fulfill workplace expectations, whether you'll kind of work late, because that's something which is, accepted in the industry norm, that, if you don't stay back after, say, not a serious worker.
Okay, Nusrat, just hold on. There's somebody speaking in the background. I request everyone else to put themselves on mute. Thank you. Nusrat, please go ahead.
Yeah. So, actually, and then, of course, you have self-doubts. Not really self-doubts, but then, you have taken a break, things have moved on. There are younger people who have come in. You may not be, if you look at the industry work, you may not be kind of taken so seriously with respect to your compensation. So all those are realities. And yes, one does face some kind of an anxiety, stress, doubts, all of that, in fact.
Hello?
Yeah, somebody is saying hello. Can you put yourself on mute, please?
Yeah.
We can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay. So, so Nusrat and Sharmila, both of you, just want to check, when you went back for your second innings, how fulfilling it has been?
Yes, it definitely is a huge confidence booster more than anything. It's very satisfying to see that people relate to you. The whole perspective of how people relate to you changes, and you see that difference. And it's very encouraging. It validates your skills, your ability to hold your own. And of course, the financial independence is a big morale booster. you may or may not need financial support, but just as a working woman, and the ability that you can take decisions on anything that you want to spend money on, independent of anybody else's influence, is really great. It has, for me personally, I'm a huge traveler. I love traveling, exploring different places, cultures, and I don't have to wait for somebody's approval. When I want to do something, I can say, okay, this is the time that I want to go. I'm going to be spending whatever 10 days in this destination, and it's completely up to me. I want it a luxury holiday or a budget. The sense of freedom is tremendous.
Yes.
And I think that's one of the biggest takeaways, that you are no longer dependent on somebody to take decisions like these. And it could be anything. It could be, you're passing by and you see something and you like it, and you say, hey, I'm going to indulge myself. You don't have to look around and say, okay, does this fit in my budget, or do I need to check with somebody? So that's another big takeaway from this whole journey. So yeah, it's absolutely satisfying. And every time that you kind of, every year that you add to it, it's just great to look back and see where you are at. You've gone through those lows when you were questioning your ability, and you come out of them stronger. And it's also a good I think example to set for your kids, right? Whether it's a girl or a boy, on being independent ultimately is what it all accounts for.
Yes. Yes. Nuzat.
Yes. Robin, here I would want to share a very interesting incident and how all this kind of, this coming back thing happened. And like, I would ditto everything that Sharmila said, all of that, financial empowerment that you feel. You have space which is just beyond family and, that parent community that you're a part of, or, your relatives, etc. So you're beyond, you have your own space also. But something that set the ball rolling for me, my elder daughter, one day she comes back and I asked her, okay, so how was your evening? Who all were you all playing with? So she started telling me, this one was there, that one was there. And she also started telling me, okay, this one's mom, this one's mom. And I asked her one innocent question, okay, so what does so-and-so's mom do? And she looked up at me and she said, oh, she's just a housewife with so much of pity. And I have a lot of respect for homemakers. And she was a child, so I don't know how, that just a housewife came from where. But, it just set the ball rolling. And like Sharmila said, that, one thing that one always wants is that your children should look up to you, and they should kind of have a role model within the family. And I have two girls, and I wanted them to see that, you have to work hard, you have to be committed of whatever you are doing, you have to be passionate. Success is very, that's besides the point, that's very, individual. But yes, they need somebody to, and that was something that kept, that kind of set the ball rolling, like I said. And I said, I need to go back and start doing kind of something. So I'm just adding on to what Sharmila said. Everything is there, like what she said. So I totally agreed to what she's saying.
Thank you, Nuzat and Sharmila. Rutuja, can you put yourself on mute, please? Ashutosh, how does one do this?
Robin, you can do it at your end too.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see where do I do that? Put people on mute.
If you click on
mute all.
Yeah, please.
Mute all.
Yeah. Just you put all of them.
That's it, right? Okay, so the only person who's speaking can unmute herself or himself. Good. So let's get some perspective of the company. We got perspective of the individuals who went back to work after 3 years and 9 years. So we have Rajiv here. And let me ask Rajiv this question. Since Sharmila pointed out that sometimes it's even at a lesser salary, you have to compromise on the pay packet. So Rajiv, why do some organizations tend to perceive this resource pool, women who are coming back to work, as one firm where they can hire at subpar compensation levels and at same or even lower designations?
Yeah, thank you very much, Robin, and thank you, Sharmila and Nuzhat, for those kind of perspectives. But let's actually put this in a larger context. Actually, this question can be answered, but it has to have a larger context of the whole issue about, as if the second innings is a little different from first innings. It assumes as if the first inning was okay, there are no problems. The issue is not like this. The issue is that there are larger context of whole women workforce being involved in the new modern day corporate working. And that's what we're talking about. And it has its own challenges. And if I were to say the larger challenges rather than the second innings, it's not a problem in itself. In fact, this can be sorted out. It's easier of the problems to be sorted out. But the larger problem is the whole context of the work-life balance being a context in corporate working the way it is today, with not there being flexible hours and not there being enough working, flexibility around the kind of the way the work is organized, given the context of the industrial age of workforce, where there were large factories, in fact, and long toiling hours, in fact, and people having to kind of sit at one particular place, coming there together and physically being together at one common place when they have to move out from their houses. Then there's the issue of equal pay for equal work, and that's always been there. There are statistics which tell that the pay mechanism between women and men, and anyways, is there's a differential of almost 20% at any given level. Then lack of career opportunities, or career opportunities being there or not there for women, particularly because of the engendered biases about what kind of jobs women can do and cannot do. And there's the larger context of biases in general against women. Then there are harassment issues at workplace. That's one part of it. And it's been told that almost 52% of the women who have actually ever worked, including those in senior positions, have been they've been harassed once or once in their lifetime at least, and only 20% of them have actually reported. Now, and the growing cost of childcare itself as a context, because when you talk of women employment, we are talking about issues which are outside the workplace, because those are the issues that hold back women. Like Sharmila and Nuzhat made it out very clearly that there were issues which kind of, they cannot be sorted out at workplace, in fact, unless and until the larger societal context changes. So that being the context, the fact that why do they hire people at lower designations and lower salaries? Now, the question is that the whole corporate setup is like, it's the whole syndrome, if you see, is built around what you call a warfare kind of a syndrome, the whole modern capitalism. Just look at the language they use. In fact, competition, kill the competition, you kind of, as if you are having an aggrandizement issue, you are kind of, just there to out and kill everybody else. You just do it. So that is the whole language is very different. And it's actually, the language reflects the kind of culture that you are encouraging and the kind of norms that are being set. So that being the context, person who is vulnerable, they are out to exploit the vulnerabilities, irrespective of whether it's a competitor or it's your own employee. So that's that's first point of the game. That if somebody is vulnerable, why not exploit it? That's one thing.
Yes.
Irrespective of whether it is beneficial to the organization or not. In short, if you were to ask me, I may sound again as Sharmila and Nuzhat, and you all, the three of you, were telling that I'm a kind of a utopian. But the point is that if you look at the context, it's actually not very, very, it's a self-defeating way of doing it. That, if you engage a person at a lower salary, at a lower designation than he or she deserves, and this works out even for he's, not only for she's. So the point is that it's not only related to women, but men also, because the short-sightedness of organizations today, the way they are created, the whole capitalist mode, and the kind of culture that we have created about competition. So the point is that, yes, people say that if you are hiring somebody at a lesser cost, why not hire her? In fact, though reducing cost has become an issue with everybody, productivity issues are there, then there are laws which are in compliance. So cost, productivity, and compliance taken together, at times people being short-sighted, they change their norms, in fact, and they hire people at a cost which they say that they will come rather than what they should have come at. So it's like exploiting the vulnerability. So that's one aspect of the whole situation, that yes, as long as this thing...
And Rajiv, it's not just in corporates. This compensation level, this problem, it's not just there. Even women tennis players have been asking for equal prize money.
Yeah, that's
Because
because
men get more, women get less.
yeah,
Actresses, film actresses are saying, why aren't we paid as much as the main hero of the film?
yeah,
So Priyanka Chopra says, why can't I be paid as much as the Shah Rukh Khan?
yeah, and then in no way Priyanka Chopra is a lesser star than Shah Rukh Khan is. Actually, in fact, if you go by credential, she has a universal appeal which Shah Rukh Khan doesn't have. So the point is that there's something wrong with the structural way we think, actually. So the real issue is the way the whole context is built around men and women, and the whole misogynistic, aspects being predominantly at the helm where they can control. They
Yeah,
are the
because
ones.
our whole, what you said correctly earlier is our whole thinking is from the industrial age, not from the service age that we are in. Industrial age was one thing. Today is a service age.
Yeah,
It's very,
because
very different.
yeah,
Yeah.
because people don't see your performance. They are not your contribution, but you see your so-called performance management at the play.
Yes.
How much of presence you display in an office, how long hours you keep. It's
That's
not
right.
that context of contribution. So in a case of a woman, she's not known by her competence, but by her gender. So these kind of things create further problems in an arena which is very competitive. So it's not an issue of men versus women. In fact, the problem with most of the women being inducted is, as I've seen earlier, the biggest stumbling block came from the women themselves who are working there. So they see them as, so it's all a matter of seeing each other as a competitor. So unless and until we change the whole context of the organization culture, your immediate boss, and your whole redesign of nature of work and workplace and workforce itself,
I'll be
which
coming to
fortunate,
that. Yeah,
yeah,
Rajiv, I'll be coming to that. So just hold on to
that will
that
be
thought.
there.
Yeah, just
It will
hold on to that thought.
yeah.
I'm coming to that. So, Nuzat, uh, when you decided I want to go back to working after your 3-hour break, did you want to go back to doing what you were doing earlier or do something totally different?
So, Robin, that's a very interesting question. When I kind of decided, and decided in the sense that I started thinking on those lines, okay, now let me go back. So the first, organization that I called back was the one that I was working with earlier. And I spoke to the director, and this gentleman was very happy. He said, and I said that, I don't know whether I'll be able to kind of work for such long hours. He said, oh, don't worry. You just work till lunchtime, 1:30, you go back home and just get things done. I said, okay. Now, anybody who's familiar with the event management industry would know what this entire thing of just get things done entail. So I said that I took a step back. I said, I'm not sure whether I would want to really go back to this kind of work with, with girls. And so I spoke to basically a lot of people after that. I also spoke to this gentleman, and I said, is it possible that I work on this one project and not join as a full-time employee? He said, no, that option is not there. And, actually organizations at that point in time were not so familiar with these, with women working on projects and, or women or anybody else. So he said, that's not an option. I spoke to my family, spoke to my husband. And like I said, anytime that you are going back to work, you also have other expectations around you, which is not just what about you, not about you only. So, घर का क्या होगा, घर पे कौन बच्चों को देखेगा, ये कैसे होगा, वो कैसे होगा, all of that. And I got in touch with a lot of other organizations for employment. Of course, I decided at the back end, what is it that I'm willing to trade off, when I go back to work. So I had that clarity in mind that once I'm going to go back, this is what I'm willing to trade off. Within that parameter, I started to explore. I found that what I was doing, I may not be able to fit into that space at all. I took a step back and I said, okay, let me look at my career not like a ladder. Let me look at it like a jungle gym. Okay, so I'm not going like this. Let me see if, there is space like this. And started talking to friends, acquaintances, and then somebody suggested, okay, there's this gentleman who's kind of starting off, and you may want to explore, speak to him. So I spoke, and basically I was not sure what I was getting into was meant for me. But what I was sure was that it fitted into my thing of, what I'm willing to trade off. I was willing to take a chance. What I saw there was a possibility of growth, and possibility of growth within the parameters that I had set for myself. So I, took a detour on my career and took on something which was completely new. I had to work very hard to understand the nuances of what, I had gotten myself into. And, and it really helped me. The advantage was also that I was not in a setup which was already there. It was a startup, and, with a startup, possibilities are immense. And, as this organization grew, I also grew along with it. So that was, that's how it happened, actually.
Thank you, Nuzat. Sharmila, what about you? Did you go back to doing the same thing?
Well, it was kind of, let me just kind of go back a few steps. So when I was going through this phase where I was trying to find myself and my identity, I, whatever the forces are there in nature, they kind of gave me the opportunity to be a part of a reality show. Where I was, where I was challenged to do something which was beyond myself, to put myself out there, in a place where it could mean I could have lost my life. But I was put in that place, and I was so focused on being a part of that challenge that I never thought about what if it went wrong, and I went ahead and I completed it, and that changed my life. It brought forth what I was capable of doing, and I think my entire my life took a whole 180-degree turn. And the confidence that that gave me, people started relating to me completely different, in a different way. And that pushed me on, saying that, hey, one thing I realized is that I have to go out there, start taking risks, and at most what would happen, I would fail. But that didn't mean that I had failed, in the sense that failure means to us, but I would have gained an experience. And I then started, dabbling in a whole lot of things, so because I wasn't sure I wanted to go back to media. I was in a production house where I used to work 14 hours a day or even longer on shoots. And I knew I definitely didn't want to go back to that, because I couldn't back away from a project saying, hey, I'm not willing to put that. But then where else do I fit in? What were my skills? So I dabbled in a lot of independent ventures, right from designing soft furnishings to adventure holidays, to graphic design, and fortunately for me, one of the things was that I had not realized, but those 5 years that I spent in the production house in different channels, right from corporate films to advertising films to television, I must have done something good and left behind a good impression, because 9 years later, literally out of the blue, I got a call from a placement agency asking me to come for an interview for a channel, and where they were looking for someone to head their dubbing department. Now that was a senior position, and I had never thought I would be able to fit in, but I guess I did something right in those 5 years. That I met those people and they offered me that position, and I took it up. It was hugely overwhelming, and I was constantly afraid that if I fail, I don't know where it's going to take me. But it was a risk I took. I worked really hard to prove myself, and it, my confidence, it changed my life in a lot of things. And I have, I always like to be on my toes, doing the same routine puts me in complacency. I get very complacent about it, and I get restless and bored. So I like to get challenged. And ever since, while I'm working for an organization, I have always been pushed into or given opportunity to say, hey, would you like to take on this role also, which is beyond my skills, but I'm willing to take that risk. And I think I have, from being in a production house to a channel where I went from, doing language dubbing to program operations to content S&P. I just then suddenly changed tracks, and I'm now in an IT company doing user experience design and design thinking. And I love the challenge. It keeps me on my toes.
Well, that's not a surprise, is it? Because you're somebody who loves trekking high up in the mountains,
Yes, that's
go on these wide tours, do
yes,
full marathons, not that half
yeah,
21-kilometer, but actually
yeah.
42-kilometer marathons.
Yeah,
So
that's something that has been a
you're
parallel
up
thing
for a
that I have
challenge
been
all the
able to
time.
pursue. Absolutely. And one of the things that sports has given me, with my group that I run with, is that there is so much positivity. You often in your workplace, you have people who are the naysayers, or always waiting for you to slip up, while you have those who champion you. But in sports, I've realized that, I have a fabulous circle of, running buddies, and they're always patting each other's back. And that reflects in everything I do. I like to see the good, and that can happen. And, if there is something that goes wrong, that's okay. That's another experience under your wings. So yeah, I mean, the trekking and everything, it kind of just keeps me energized and helps me burn my energy
I'm sure. I'm
also.
sure. So with that, I'm going to go back to what Rajiv started, and I said I'm going to come back to you on this. So Rajiv, when women come back to work for their second innings, are they considered to be less committed, less dependable, and less authoritative as compared to women who are not mothers, who haven't taken a break? And does this have a direct effect on their appraisals and in turn influences their daily job experience over time?
I think you are probably absolutely right, because once say why first of all, let's see exactly what are the reasons why this thing happens actually in an organization. Because firstly, women are then seen as not being their priorities correct. Coming there with their priorities, because that means this work is not a full-time priority. That's the assumption again, and in many cases it's true. Many cases it's magnified. So it's and in many cases just concocted. It's not there because. But then that's one of the issues, that that's not a full-time priority. And those of us who are working, full-time, it could be men and women both at the workplace, where they're more committed to the duration of work. That's my point, because I've always seen people who grumble are not the ones who are very competent. They are the ones who kind of find their it's their own insecurity that makes them think so. But then they are predominant majority and they think so like that. That's one thing. The other is that when people come back, then women come back, particularly back to work, it's seen as an accommodation rather than something which fits into the work. So that these two things issues, that firstly that it's seen that it's not somebody's priority full time, still she has to be accommodated, and therefore this might reduce my chances of growth and flourish, which I thought assumed that would happen if this person was not introduced. So that is the whole issue. So there's lack of policy, there is lack of it's a kind of at different levels the problem comes from. There is lack of clarity, there's lack of understanding, misunderstanding, there's lack of policies not being right. And in fact, what's more important is that, like for example, you just heard Sharmila talk about the fact that, well, and these two wonderful women, they have done so well because, say, they're dealing with an arena which is not which is more suited anyways to the modern woman, because she's into design thinking space, the right part usage of brain, creativity, where this kind of an approach of traditional mindset being applied is not actually applicable to that extent, and it can be avoided there. So therefore, they'll anyways do well because it's their competence. It's not the gender which has brought them there, wherever they have achieved and whatever they've achieved with the passion. So, but then that's lost sight of, because in a competitive environment, I said, where people find anything, it could be a man or a woman, but more women, because this happens, they think that, yes, they are being accommodated. And in fact, every time they come back. So that's the issue. So that's the reason part of it. Now, what happens and what can be done about it, and what are this has to be studied from that point of view, that having acknowledged that, yes, this is in fact a problem. Now, once the problem is, what are the solutions, and what are the probable futuristic trends that are emerging which can accommodate more people coming back, in fact, an issue or solve the context of women being absorbed into workforce in general. So let's assume that there is a changing market situation because of changing technology. And changing workforce also is important, because the workforce, the quality, the content, the work is changing. Now, what will make this happen would be, firstly, so there's a reality around there. There's a the thing that, it's wrong there. People are taking that coming back not well, and there are issues which have to be addressed at the level of technology, at the level of market, at the level of workforce change, which is accommodating, which is actually giving you signs that yes, things can be changed. The basic issue is that, Robert, this will not happen till such time, you think that diverse, gender diversity will also make the company profitable, which means that having more women at workplace will also be profitable. It was like typically CSR. CSR was done only because people think that it's, as long as they were thinking as part of charity, it was not happening. But now that they've realized that strategy. So there's the hardcore reality also, the bottom line requirement. So the point is that in the modern day economy, for example, the modern 21st century economy, it's looking that, yes, having more women, because there is data to prove that organizations which have had more gender diverse, setup, and where there have been more women directors, in fact, on the board, there has been less of chances. There was a study done that the risk of insolvency has been reduced by almost 28%. Now, you see, it's a good thing to do and also profitable to do. So people will tend to do, at least at the organizational level. Then there'll be issues to be sorted out between the peers and the seniors and the people. But the organizationally, that will make sense. So now it's making sense, actually. So the good news is that, yes, it's making on-demand workforce, augmented workforce, the gig economy, where, as Sharmila put it correctly, the kind of work that she does can be kind of configured, which does not actually hinder anybody else's. So this whole mentality of the scarcity mentality of only those many jobs being available, the size of the cake being limited. But now you can have a larger size of the cake with each and everybody. With more of incorporation of women, the size of the cake increases, and the probability of the pie of everybody's, the size of the pie increasing. So it makes good for kind of, indulging, in fact, incorporating those collaborative virtues, so that then people will not take it badly. And the more of the women come it's to their mutual advantage. So I think there are a lot of factors and forces which are operating currently. But that does not deny the fact that things are really bad at the ground level. It's for women who are smart, who are kind of, anyways very competent, more competent than probably, I wouldn't say that it's a wrong comparison to say that she or he is more competent than man, or man is more competent than woman. But it's like workforce of today is more competent than they were earlier in a traditional context. So, and women being no exception and men being no exception either. So the point is that this kind of a culture, which is very healthy, will alone kind of, sort out the problem. There's no point crying over the fact that, well, these are the problems which women will face, but and they will continue to face anyway. So it's stating the obvious. So when I say that, the whole structure of policy, processes, structures, like, for example, it's like the whole setup of an organization, which will involve a lot of things. There will be few core dimensions and there will be few enablers. The core dimensions, say, for example, the workforce strategy itself, how you can incorporate the current work into such a way you can take small gigs out of it, in fact, and distribute the work where people sitting remotely can work, where people can sit at home and work. There'll be more flexibility, as Nusrat rightly said, in the entertainment industry, and Hilton Hotel, in fact, is amongst those which is known for this kind of accommodation, that, you complete your job within a particular hour, and as long as your quality is good, you get paid as if you were present for the whole duration. So this kind of a thing is becoming possible, and it does not affect the bottom line negatively at all. In fact, if at all it does, more of engagement of the people, and the women, in fact, who are there, they find the benefits. In fact, they involve themselves more and get more engaged.
Yeah, Rajiv, so with that, coming to the next question that I wanted to ask you was, did you face challenges when you wanted to bring the women for their second innings into the workplace?
Yeah, so I was in fact coming to that. So given this context where cost, productivity, and compliance, because laws will have to be changed. So the current context, if you see, nothing's going to happen. There are people who keep on complaining. It will be just counting the trees, losing the sight of the forest. So it will not happen. You see it at the level of workforce strategy. You see at the level of the whole context of talent acquisition, the way you make it incumbent upon people to have more women workforce. In fact, gender diversity in general. Then your retention and engagement strategy, where you can have this flexible hours, flexi working possibilities and all, where people can get engaged and they can be more productive and they can be more of, diversity, which will make workplace better and more profitable. Then the whole human capital development, the whole strategy will have to be around, encouraging people to take up jobs which actually are more in tune with right side usage of brain, creativity, parallel thinking. And the whole organization design and governance mechanism will have to act.
My question was, how did you handle these challenges when they came to you?
So this is going to happen. And what is going to enable is that whole leadership change, the whole context around the culture itself. As I said, the culture becomes more collaborative, because more of women, in fact, will lead to improvement of culture in any ways. Organizations which have had more women, this culture has improved on its own. And this was what I worked around it, where I changed the whole context of leadership, that leadership's understanding. Because once you understand the problem, then you can solve the problem. There'll be naysayers and kind of people who will be, of course, supporting. But then that's a thing, once you have said that, yes, this is the right thing to do, and we go ahead and do it. Then the whole HR operating model will have to change. Digital probably is going to kind of help us accommodate this change, in fact. And this did in my case, in fact. Though, of course, when the time that I'm talking about, the digitization was not to that extent, but a lot of things which we used to call those days automation was taking place. And that was helping people kind of, do this. And the whole workforce analytics, where gig economy, of course, of today, and this whole augmented workforce becomes a possibility. Now, this was the context in which I was trying to kind of incorporate this change. And I changed the policies, in fact, that yes, if women come back, then even if they have worked for, say, 3 crucial months, they'll be evaluated in that particular year for the intensity with which they work, not the duration. Because let me tell you, that's a person like Sharmila would appreciate, because when you run a marathon and then you run a sprint, the point is that if you've run the sprint well, you have run it anyways, So it doesn't mean that, but then duration is less. But at least if she has contributed, let him be evaluated on the time that he or she has spent in that year, and not that they have not worked for the full year, so their contribution is less, so they get a rating which is below. So this kind of changes that I incorporated in the organization really actually was there to support them. But yes, as I said earlier, the problem came from the women themselves in the organization who were there. So they found that this is like, she has not been here for the whole year. Why should she be accommodated? And there were all kinds of problems which came up. Yes, that has to be sorted out. So that's one issue. The source of the problem was also women, not that, so because women also took that as a competitive thing, that, this is not something. So this is an opportunity for me to keep her out of this. Though she has performed well, but then she went out. It's like you are paying a penalty. You are firstly being made to look like a victim, and then you are victimized for a fault which was never yours, and it couldn't be. And they don't factor the enrichment that a woman comes with after her kind of, the postnatal, contribution at work which can take place. So the problem was the structural problems were there. There were people issues, which there were people who were not ready to kind of, go ahead. And actually speaking, then the whole context of realization, organizational policies had to be kind of incorporated and not only brought in there. The problem, Robin, was not that the policies were not there. The policies were the real problem, and this obstinacy with which people held on to the privileges was using or misusing the policies. So the deployment of the policies, what is in letter at times and not in spirit. So people would just see it as compliance, not as something they were involved with. So if I'm convinced with the policy, I'll incorporate the letter and the spirit goals. So if you were to answer your question, the major sources of problems were the policy structure not being there, in fact, which was helpful. The other was the people themselves. In fact, those people who took that this is an intrusion and this will kind of, affect me negatively. So we had to take that whole, that's one thing from the people, the peers and the subordinates and the kind of, people who were directly linked to them. And of course, the whole leadership. The leadership itself was not prepared. So that why we keep accommodating, just give them a work which is like, it's disturbing. Nobody wants to, touch the status quo easily, because they thought that if it's working out, why to kind of mess up with it? Because they are not very confident about such interventions leading to benefit. Because that's what, in fact, in Sharmila would be able to bear me out, that in design thinking principle, what is important is today what is realized. And then tomorrow something is getting validated. So in this period of transition is where these algorithms, till the time it becomes a new algorithm, there are whole sort of transition issues where people are very skeptical about what you're doing. So it was the skepticism which was a major problem, that yes, these are the things which can actually lead to more problems than they'll solve. So that was the context in which this opposition did.
Thanks, Rajiv. So with that, and earlier from what Sharmila and Nusrat shared, now this question goes back to both of you. Now you knew how women are treated when they come back from a break, whether it's for taking care of children or taking care of in-laws or one's own parents. When you come back after a break, like in Nusrat's case 3 years and Sharmila's case 9 years. So in spite of all the thoughts and apprehensions that you had, how did the two of you prepare yourself to go back to a job, do it well, and succeed and reach where you have reached today?
Nusrat, you want to take this first?
Yeah, I'll kind of
go ahead.
So, Robin, this is this is something which is really kind of, you've hit the bullseye. When you are, in fact, just before I start, I will share some data with you, which is not really in the Indian context, but I've picked it up from Lean In, which is written by Sheryl Sandberg, that, it's only when women take a break, only about 70% come back to some kind of work or the other. And only about 40% enroll in a permanent kind of a job. Now that is the context there. In India, we don't have that kind of data, but almost 20 million women stopped working between, 7 years, which was a time frame of, I think, 2005 to 2011, some data that I saw. I mean, that's a phenomenal number. And the reason and the challenge is that, once you are back, there are various things. The first thing is that your compensation is not viewed, in the right frame. Just because you took a break, you will, if you are lucky enough, and that's something that I have experienced myself. If you are lucky enough, you might start from where you left. Otherwise, in most cases, you will be offered a compensation which will be much lower than, even where you left, which was, I don't know how many years back. And that's not a fair deal. So, but that's a fact. The only thing that you have in your, what is it that you can do about it? You have to actually prove yourself. You have to work doubly hard than your male counterparts.
So that was the question. You and Sharmila knew all these things happened, right? Even before you went in.
Yeah.
And yet you went back in and you have done very well, both of you, and reached the positions that you have reached. So the question is, how did you prepare yourself and what has kept you going and brought you to where you have reached now?
Okay. So, there are three parts to it. One is mentally. You have to kind of toughen yourself, be ready for the battle. Second is emotionally, because there are various emotions that you will be handling, not only at workplace, but also at home. So that's the second part. And third is with respect to yourself. So how are you going to work on yourself to, come out with flying colors on what you have taken? So it's like, all over, you kind of, you kind of prepare yourself mentally, emotionally, and on the self level, at every level. Look out at reach out any possibility that you can to, acquire the right skills. Look at, ask for opportunities, which at times, at workplace, people may not think that, you are capable of. Maybe explore, new collaborations, go out, network, all that was required actually. All that. Reaching out to people, exploring, developing new skills, reading, everything.
So,
yes,
Robin, in, everything, as Nusrat said, that yes, you have to do a lot of networking. But, in my case, the first thing that I did was that I told myself that I'm now going to put myself first, because when you take the break, everything else takes priority. right? It's the kids, the family, everyone else's needs. That's where you start losing confidence in yourself. And when I decided that, okay, if I am not happy, it's going to reflect in everything that I do and in every relationship that I have, the way I interact with people. So I said, I don't care if people think I'm being selfish, but I need to do this for myself. So you have to accept that that's a reality. See, at the end of the day, you are answerable to yourself first and foremost, and your happiness,
Yes.
you have to also acknowledge the fact that your happiness lies in your control. You cannot look at other people to make you happy. So what is it that I need for me to be in that space where I can say, yes, I'm ready to take on whatever challenge it is, be it on the personal front or on the on the professional front. So that is the first and foremost thing that I told myself. It's difficult. It's not something that you kind of suddenly realize and say, hey, I can do it. But you have to, whenever you are at those crossroads, you have to see, okay, what would I do for myself first, so that I can have a good night's sleep. And once you do that, then I said, okay, let me start. Because I was lost. I didn't know where to begin. Where do you start this hunt? So I started exploring possibilities, opportunities. I did some, because I'm a creative person, I created stuff with my hands and I sold it on a website which sells handmade stuff. So I was amongst these creative people. I was doing graphic design, I was doing adventure sport, and I kept exploring these options, because at that point in time I thought that going back into the corporate world meant going at a lesser salary, at a much lower level, and on what basis can I demand more? So I said, let me find my niche. But and so I started doing these things, and then I also realized that I'm not cut out to be an entrepreneur. You need a different kind of personality to be an entrepreneur, right? It's a completely different ball game. And that's when I realized that, okay, this is not for me. But at least I was eliminating, so for my journey was by elimination. I was eliminating these and seeing that, okay, where do I, so I'm okay to work for an organization where I know what my job is and what I need to do. I am not very good at doing something, running a business independently. So that is what you have to acknowledge, that, okay, where do you then belong? And then you start, prioritizing, and keep an open mind. Again, our ego is our biggest thing, right? You say that, okay, when I quit, I was at this position, this was the salary I was going to get. You have to let it go. It's the reality. While we would love to say that, hey, but I was really good in my job, it's dated. I mean, anything a year later, things are dated. That's how everything is changing. That's how technology and the industry in every field is changing. So you
Yes.
have to be open.
Yes, so Sharma, one question here. Is it necessary for a woman who was working earlier to go back to employment after the break? Can't she become an entrepreneur? Like in your case, you tried and you discovered that's not
Yeah.
really something that you're cut out for.
Yeah, no, she definitely can, but that is for each of them. They have to discover and see,
Yes.
is it for me? Because you need a completely different kind of dedication and grit and determination to be an entrepreneur. Because you are struggling and you are swimming against the current, right? In a salaried or a service job, your salary is coming regularly in the bank. Then it just depends on how well you're doing your role.
Yes.
So each one has to find what is that space that I am most comfortable in. And for me, that's how I kind of tried it and tested it, and I realized that maybe now I might be in a different place. I'm not ruling out that option, but at that point in time, it was not what I wanted. And I definitely wanted that financial remuneration. So it was just before I turned 40. Another thing is that you realize that, and I can say this, I really believe in women power, because I was brought up by a strong woman, and I have a sister, so we were like all women in this household. And I feel that when we set our minds to do something, we will achieve it. We'll do whatever it takes, and we are amazing at multitasking. It's just that sometimes this multitasking gets overwhelming. and then you kind of get lost. So you have to start prioritizing. You have to step back, breathe a little, and then move on. But that also is one of our strongest points. We can run a home and do fantastically well in your job because we are who we are.
Yes, yes.
Robin, here I would want
Completely.
to add on one thing.
Yes.
Also just to just to add on to what Sharmila was saying, while you are preparing yourself, you also need to realize that you cannot do it all. You have to accept that. It's easier said than done. There'll be things that you'll have to eliminate with, you maybe your heart would bleed on that, but there is no way that you will have to kind of accept that, and that makes your life easier and you feel happier, less of guilt, and you're not judging yourself, like Sharmila, you were also saying that love for self, so you're not judging yourself all the time, you're not feeling guilty about things that you're not doing. So you will have to decide that I cannot do it all. Make a choice.
In fact,
It's always a choice. Yes. Yeah, go ahead.
I need to make a point because I've been going through, in fact, and conducting a lot of under the entrepreneurial mindset, change in the Delhi schools. So I keep going to schools, in fact, very often. In fact, I volunteer 3 times a week. And that was like, I've done almost about close to about 3,000, 4,000 students so far. So when I interacted particularly with the girl students, I found that, when I asked them a typical question about what are you thinking of doing, they're not keen on jobs. In fact, 80% of the girls say that we don't want jobs, we want to create jobs. Now, that is the good news that, these wonder stories that Sharmila and Nusrat have told us, basically, they are so inspiring that, we got to kind of discount on the superficial, which is, the problems that are there, they are there. Of course, there's a ridiculous end of the spectrum, but the sublime end of the spectrum is that 80% of the government school girls, I'm telling you, I'm not talking about the convent educated and the public school girls and boys, but those girls who have said that we want to create jobs, we want to do something. So, and they're getting into technology and they're kind of, ready to take up that entrepreneurial plunge. And they say that we are not, and I say that, I encourage them that, yes, I mean, the context of today's working and the technology and the changing marketplace is actually going to help you.
Yeah, it does. It does. And talking about all the apprehensions and various barriers that come up, and even you spoke about it, Rajiv. So I wanted to ask you: isn't there an urgent need now, like an urgent need, to address human resources and reporting managers' skepticism about the candidates' learning agility, availability for on-site assignments, level of enthusiasm, need for too much time flexibility and emotional readiness to resume a demanding career?
I mean, the answer lies in your question itself, Robin. Very well put. The
Like an urgent need.
Yeah, it's an emergent. It's like there's no future if we don't do this, basically.
As a day before yesterday.
Yeah. It should have been done long back, but at least the future has arrived now, at least. Already we have to go by that logic that future has arrived and it's not going to come there in future. So it's going to start doing it. See, there are 3 elements here. One is the organizational, the problems, because I've been on both the sides. In fact, I've been for long enough, in fact, being with the changes that I've studied this issue at length, in fact, and I've seen to it that at least in the Anil Dhirubhai Ambani group, there was a big achievement for whatever has happened to the group currently. But what they did for the cause of the women was great, because there were almost, and there was a time when we would used to induct at those days, when I'm talking 2005 and 6, when these Salesforce and all were not talking about what they talk now. The Western world is now talking about diversity. The Indian context, diversity was in fact being talked about the Indian corporates there. We recruit almost about 50% women those days by design. And the people would, and we would create policies that would help them retain themselves for years together. So that was one context. See, there are 3 elements in it, I would see. The organizational policies, your immediate superior, where the intervention needs to be taking place. The policy level changes, the processes, in fact, and then deployment of the policies, that's important. Because that's where the failure has happened and that's where things don't happen. So there's a lot of communication. There is a lot of process improvement, empowerment, and continual communication about things that this is how it has to. happen, and this can actually happen. The other is the immediate superior with whom he or she is working. Basically, that person is very important. In fact, that he should, or he or she should be able to kind of understand that yes, the cause of the women coming back, particularly apart from the generic issue of women being employed, is that there are special needs which are outside the workplace. You have to accommodate them in a lot of issues, but that's not accommodation. Actually, again, that's a strategic intervention, because you increase the engagement quotient of that lady, of that woman whom you are kind of wanting her contribution to come there, not the duration she spends alone. So that's the great mindset change, and that's what I talked about. That open mind firstly, and then you open your heart to abundance. That yes, doing this will be profitable also. And last but not the least is the fact that the nature of work that he or she is allocated. So it has to change at the level of policies and structures which accommodate those governance issues, those kind of core issues of HR structuring, and those enablers like leadership, culture change, and commitment of the leadership and change of culture altogether, so that these things become possible. But most important is the very nature of work. Like for example, when I don't remember, Nusrat or Sharmila made the point about the whole issue of salaries, at the level that you were drawing something, and then you are made to kind of look at positions that you are kind of giving up certain things. My whole issue is that no, that whole thing also has to change, because in India particularly, and less in the West actually, and I've learned a lot of examples when I went to particularly at on the West Coast, where they're doing a lot of changes. In fact, and those companies have taught us a lot of lessons. The point is that why should you pay salary at the last drawn? There's always a reference in the Indian context that, what was your last drawn salary? Now, if last drawn salary was wrong, to hell with it, forget it. Whatever it was and when was it? The point is that she has now come, there is no process to assess a person at the level of competence he or she is at the time when she or he is looking for a job. So that is one biggest lacuna in our construct. People say that what were you drawing in that salary, so you get 10% increase. Now, there are times when I've seen that there was no need for 10% increase also, many times. And the fact that there's been a gap, what do you mean by gap? People have gone for, sabbatical, they've enriched themselves, they've done their post-grad, they've done a lot of stuff that, while they've gone out, it's an issue that generally we associate that people go out for the family reasons. But then a woman is free to go even for adding to her virtues, in fact, competence. In fact, he or she is as free as men are to kind of, develop herself and kind of encourage herself with these kind of sabbaticals. So when they come back, you have to be evaluative in a manner which is more holistic and more real, rather than going by those assumptions and those outdated norms, which will not serve you any good today. Because to have a gender diverse organization would lead to profitability also. So if you are a good manager, if you are a good entrepreneur, you are a good person who is handling at the right level of maturity of HR principles and policies, then you will always have this view that yes, you got to be absolutely right in doing things. You got to be not just doing the right things, but you have to, of course, the right things have to be done like this, but the right things have to be done in the right way as well. So that's like, the putting the cart before the horse. Otherwise, that you do it. So at the level of policies, at the level of immediate superior, and the level of your own structural change and work that you do yourself, these three things are very pivotal, in fact, in actually giving an answer to your question.
So with that, I have one last question that I want to ask all three of you, and just two points each. What would be your recommendation, suggestion to women who are going back to work? What should they be doing? So 2 points each. And no repeat.
Make the point first, I think.
Nusrat, you want to start? Just two things what a woman should do.
Okay. So one is and have clarity on what is it that you would not want to get into. I won't say that start thinking of what you want to get into, because then you were narrowing down. And so one, be clear on that. And the second is...
So you said one is be clear about what you don't want to get into.
Correct. Don't want to get into.
Okay.
Second, think of a career, which I said right in the beginning also, like a jungle gym. You don't have to look at it like this. You can just be like this.
Yes.
Which I have also done, and Sharmila shared her journey, which she has also done.
Okay.
So you don't have to go like this, look at it like this.
Got it. Sharmila?
As
Two tips from you.
Yeah. So, to add to Nusrat's points, one would be that, build and nurture your support system, because that is ultimately going to give you the confidence to leave your home and get into the professional world and spend a large part of your day there. Having said that, if you have sons, you know, get them let them see you as independent women. Teach them how to respect women and to cherish their freedom, because they are tomorrow going to go in the world and support the females and the ladies that enter their lives. The jury is still out on mine, but I'm working on it on my son. But yeah, I mean, because it's not just your struggle, you're also trying to kind of set the path for the others, and this is something that's in our control. So yes, definitely, ensure that your children, especially your sons, also value women, you know
Got
that
it.
Well,
Thank you. Rajiv?
yeah, I think very well put. I think by both of them. I would just add on to it, like in the sense that in the current context, what they should do is the following. I would say that there is a context of downplaying on the technical and the more physical skills as the workforce is being redesigned, the workplace and the work is being redesigned. The industry 4.0 in implications for the kind of work at which will be requiring very different set of skills, which will be more of those generic life support skills like cognitive flexibility, emotional integrity, critical thinking, complex problem solving, and creativity. Now, when in that context, women are anyways, I wouldn't, in fact, say yes or no to it. The point is that there also could be a bias and assumption that they are supposed to be better, if not as good, in fact. So they got to kind of, strengthen, in fact, this particular advantage that if they have at all, they must kind of work upon it, because this is going to be the future. Because in a world where most of those programmable and predictable things would be done by robots, so those mechanical skills may not be as relevant, in fact, and the way the workforce and the workplace is being redesigned, if you develop and hone the skills of the future, where more of clarity on your disposition, your perspective, your conceptualization, your coalescing skills, your heart, body, mind, and soul together. Those are the fourth industrial revolution intelligences on which they have to work upon. So I would say that the modern 21st century woman will have to work around these skills, in fact, and this predominantly develop these kind of intelligences, which I think would be taking them miles ahead of competition. In fact, then there'll be people who have to do a lot of catching up to do with them, which I think that's the way forward. I would say that you will not be at a disadvantage. You will be able to claim rather than be given. That's the context today, that people think that they're giving, but that's not. They're claiming, but you give it as if you're giving, just taking advantage of the context in which your women would be ready to kind of accommodate. But I think the spirit with which I see these government girls' schools to 11th, 12th class girls saying that, I'll be creating jobs and I'll be working on a different plane altogether, I think that gives me a lot of hope. So
That's a
women,
huge
if
contextual shift.
yeah, that's the whole context I built it, that, there's reason for it. There is availability of such possibilities, and you just have to choose. So what's stopping you is just you pick up the gauntlet and cross the Rubicon. That's what I say.
Yeah, so everybody else who's on this call listening to more than 80 years of wisdom and experience over here. Now it's the time for you to ask your questions. So please type your questions in the chat and ask your questions that you have. And those of you who are going to be watching the recording, you should know that we have these three really, really lovely, successful people: Rajiv Bhadoria, Sharmila Bijur, and Nuzhat Nasreen. So while I hope this video has helped you a lot, those of you who are going to be watching the recording, so please go ahead and ask your questions. In case you want to unmute yourself and ask the question, do that too, whatever you're comfortable with, either through chat or by verbal. Please go ahead. Just unmute yourself. So Mandeep had earlier said, Rajiv, after what you had spoken, he said, very unfortunate, however, it comes from a deeper issue. right now he's saying very insightful session. I'm keen to connect with Sharmila and Nusrat one-on-one. Okay, so this is oftentimes asked. So to all three of you, how can people connect with you?
I have a question. Can I ask it first?
Yeah, sure. Please go ahead.
I wanted to ask, basically, I've been, I started off after 9 years.
Yes.
But I started off with something of my own. So I've been struggling entrepreneur since 2 years. So I wanted to know if what are the qualities, as Sharmila was saying, you need to be entrepreneur, be an entrepreneur. Am I missing something out because it's a real struggle, but I'm sticking to it. So what are the key qualities that you need for a woman to come back as an entrepreneur?
You know, I'm not the right person to say that, because as I shared earlier, right, I have also struggled as an entrepreneur. But I think one of the things that I learned was that you have to do a lot of networking, to the extent that, you know, people are always they're apprehensive about your ability. So you have to be able to put forth what is so unique about you that helps you stand out, you know. And I think persistence is one of the things that as an entrepreneur that you would require to do. I think you know, if anyone else can add to that.
Yeah, actually, if there is an entrepreneur in the group,
Yeah.
if there is an entrepreneur in a group, I think that person would be the right person to answer it. Yeah, go ahead, Nuzar.
Yeah. So Aditi, now, you know, it seems that you have stuck on to your venture for the past 2 years. So you are a persistent person. Maybe what you may need to look and explore is whatever opportunities. See, most of entrepreneurs are very passionate about their offerings. So very objectively, maybe you'll need to bounce off what is your business model, what is your offering, is it something really that is needed? So, you know, you can kind of connect up with people around and take a view on that. Take a look at the whole business. It could be that it is something which is wonderful and you are very passionate about, but maybe either the need is not there, or the segment is not the right one, or the pricing is not what it should be. So I think those are the things maybe that you can, you know, explore and look at.
Yeah, I think, Nasrat, just to add a word, basically, because it's the ikigai that you have to discover. What's the ikigai for you? What you love doing and what is needed by others and what is profitable too. So you got to make a choice of this. And as an entrepreneur, that's more important, that, you know, you are in the right segment where you are good at, you are passionate about, and you also find there's a need for it and people are willing to pay for it. So this ikigai, which is now talked about these days, this whole Japanese strategy to get it right. I think to add to what Nusrat said, that, you know, if you are able to develop this ikigai, that's where you have to invest some time to know actually exactly as to what is your ikigai. And then once you get it right, I think that's the way you should pursue. Then persuasion, yes, persistence will pay definitely, because in this current context, fortunately, there's nothing called failure. The failure happens only when you give up. So as long as you don't give up, there's nothing called failure. In this whole startup culture as it is, we see that, you know, today 99 out of 100 fail, but that one which succeeds and the 99 which don't at the first attempt, these 99 would be a part of the next 100, where one definitely will succeed at least. So I think we have to go on by this permutation and combination. We are living in this world of possibility, where if you develop your ikigai right, the need must be there and people should be willing to pay, and you should love doing that, and you should also be good at. So there are 3-4 combinations which you have to combine together to get your ikigai right.
Yeah, that's what one thing I realize is that the ikigai is there. I found that. But networking is the issue where I kind of falter. I'm not very great at networking.
No, Aditi, I think that's actually just your mindset. You kind of, you know, go ahead, and I see that possibility happening very soon. It's just been 2 years actually, so 2 years is too short a time. Even if you think that way, don't give up on this.
Okay,
I think
there's a question from
ultimately
Ruchi.
going to be successful in the long run.
There was a question from Ruchi where she's talking about are there some companies which have these kind of programs for women for the second innings? So Ruchi, this is for you. I'm going to read out names of some companies which will help you. One is the Tata Group, which has Tata Second Career Internship Program, SCIP. That's a Tata group. Then IBM has Bring Her Back program. Godrej has Second Career for Women, Careers 2.0. Hindustan Unilever has Career by Choice. Philips has Back in the Game, which is called BIG, Big. Intel has Home to Office. GE India has a program called Restart. Axis Bank calls it Reconnect. And Accenture calls it Career Reboot. Actually, Accenture has a counter on their website where when I saw it last week, it said 388 women they've hired on their second innings. So you can go to these companies and check it out. And Ashutosh has said something. I like Nuzat's comment about ladder versus jungle gym and Sharmila's emphasis about women's ability to multitask efficiently. Can I request both of them to give a specific example for each of these principles? So Nuzat, your jungle gym.
Okay. So the jungle gym is nothing but, you don't look at it like this. Okay. So this is my career, next step here, next step here, next step here. Somebody is below me, somebody is above me, and I have to push this person, I have to go like this. So what I looked at, the way I looked at it was like a jungle gym. So I didn't look at it like this. So I didn't look at event management and marketing, the way, the space that I came from. But I looked at it in a different way. I said, okay, I have this set of skills. Now let me look at a career where I can make a beginning, maybe using some of it, or maybe learning some more. So it was like going away from what I was doing. So that was what I meant when I said that. So you don't really have to, look at a frame like this. You can actually open it like this. And that's another way of.
So Ashutosh, let me take this opportunity to share and tell me if it is a jungle gym or not. Now, when I started computer science, worked as a programmer, then gave up all that, got into selling fabric for shirts and trousers. Then from that, I moved to human resources. Then from human resources, I went back to project management in a large IT company working on IBM S390 mainframes. From that, I went to life insurance, heading the learning and development for the operations team for a multinational life insurance company. After that, into coaching and consulting with a business consulting company. So it's all nothing to do with what I did earlier. No connection. So I can't say my previous experience will help me here. It is a kind of a restart every time.
In fact, Sutosh, to say that what Robin was doing, there was a lot of method in what he was doing actually. You don't take him on his face value, because what I say, the reason behind his success was the fact that he was taking the benefit of the past, but not getting burdened by the past. So the jungle gym would actually help you maneuver your way through the various possibilities that emerge. You don't give up on the past strength, but don't get burdened by it. So accept things as they come, broaden your horizons. And I think that's the way where possible in this world of possibility, because there's nothing right or wrong today. The golden rule is that there are no golden rules today. But that's exactly the way the future is going to be anyways.
Robin, someone had asked about opportunities for second innings. I just wanted to add on here.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Yeah, there's a portal which is called Second Innings, which matches, whatever you are looking for. And I think that company is based out of Bangalore or something like that. So you can check. Whosoever asked, I kind of missed on that. That person can go and check on that portal also.
Sharmila, question was about your multitasking ability.
Okay, so yeah, like.
So specific example.
Yes. So one of the things, when I took up running as something where I could set goals for myself and keep working towards those goals. So, first it started with a half marathon and then it went on to a full marathon. So when this was about 3 years ago, when I was, going to touch 50 in 2017, I decided to run a full marathon, and I wanted to run it at, time it at a decent timing, like not do it over a longer period of time. So I wanted to put a time barrier for it, and say that, okay, in 4 hours, 30 minutes, which is not very fast, but it's fast for me. And it was also a time which was extremely busy for me at work. I had 3 projects for which I was traveling across the APAC region often enough. And I had another friend who was running the same marathon with me, and we had both signed up with this very, very demanding running coach. And he was extremely strict, and there were a lot of do's and don'ts. And I signed up with him, and every day, every week, we would get this routine that we had to run and do these runs. And I had like really long days at work, so there were times when I remember I had to do my longest run. So I would wake up at 2 and 3 in the morning to finish my training before I would get into work, or finish. And my husband also was traveling a lot during that time. And on one particular day, when my training was at its peak, and my longest run was 36 kilometers, which I had to do that weekend. So it was on a Sunday, and I had a flight to catch at 10 a.m. So I woke up at 2:30 in the morning, drove down to Burley Seaface in town in Mumbai. And I started my run at 3:30 in the morning. I ran my 36 kilometers and finished it at around 8:30, drove back home to Andheri, which is 19 kilometers from that point, showered, had my breakfast, and was at the airport at 10. After that full flight to Bangkok, it was a 5-hour flight. I was just so wired up. I thought I would just, kind of sleep it off, but I was just the adrenaline was pumping high. I was wide awake on the flight. I reached in Bangkok, and I had 2 meetings on that Sunday prior to my meeting on the following day. So it was an high. And I think that I got all that energy because I was not focused only on my work. I had something else going parallel that would bring the energy into my work. So, and that kind of gives you an high. And that's like multitasking to its limits. But
so who says women who are coming back for the second innings are not committed? You should really meet up the two of you. They'll get their head sorted out.
Very difficult concept.
Okay, any other questions? Please ask your questions. You don't get to meet 80 years of wisdom together.
I'm just going to take a minute if
yes, please, Fatima, go ahead.
So happy to be here. So happy to be here, really. Nuzhat is someone I met recently, and I know her a little bit. And it's so in line. I just want to say that this conversation today is so in line with, what's going on in my life, simply because so very, very much like what Nuzhat said, about jungle gym opposed to ladder, because I was in the space of, corporate training for about 10 years. And that started to get old for me, and I kept looking at, okay, what can I do? And then I ran a motorcycling academy for women for 2 years. So I went this way, and I was done doing that. And, but again, now I'm in that space of, what's next? And I've realized what's stuck over the years, and even Sharmila, with what you said, I started running marathons, at the age of 48, it's just being silly. But I get that. I remember this one time, like you were saying, I was doing a coaching in Hyderabad, and I'd gotten back, and my flight was supposed to get back to Gurgaon. I was supposed to be home by 10 p.m. and I had, run in the morning at 4. And it got delayed. The flight got delayed 2 hours. And I was like, I'm not running this. And the coach sends me a message, you're coming. Doesn't matter what time you get home from the airport. And I get that level of commitment, and the reason I feel it's so in line is because one knows that I'm really looking at, because training keeps showing up in my life. I keep getting requests for it. I keep thinking this is a core competency that I feel I have. So why not go back to leveraging it? And Sharmila, design thinking is what's been on my mind like for the last couple of months. As a matter of fact, I attended a session with ISD, which is where my daughter is studying. So I would love to connect with both of you. I think I just need longer conversations. I would love to really connect with both of you over this to really figure out, how to build that network. I feel this is an opportunity also just to speak with people who are in that space, to get onto webinars like this is a great opportunity. But I would love to speak with you both individually. Nuzat, you and I have already set up, which is great. But
Yeah.
Sharmila also.
Mandip, more than happy to talk, more than happy to talk, and in whichever way I can share my experiences, and which can kind of help you find your next calling.
Yeah.
I'm happy to connect. So you can ping me on LinkedIn and we can.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's the best. If you want to get connected with Rajiv or Nuzhat or Sharmila or me, Robin Sawan, just connect with us on LinkedIn. Okay. All right. Anybody else? Any questions you have? Please ask a question. You can unmute yourself. I guess all the questions are answered.
Yeah.
Or if you're typing,
yeah.
I can't see anything in the
Good
chat.
afternoon.
Yeah, go ahead, please. Who knows that?
Yeah, I'm Fatima.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. And
Yes,
thank
Fatima,
you so
go
very,
ahead.
thank you so very, very much for this very insightful session. A lot of pertinent points, made there and very well explained for us. I have a question around this whole, when we are talking about the post-COVID paradigm shift around the workplace norms and also the employment, is there anything in particular that you foresee with context to this career restart or second inning? And that is keeping in mind a person who would be interested in joining back in the month or a 3 months time.
I think that's exactly, if I take it, this question I'll take. Basically, Fatima, it's a great opportunity for people, in fact, to join back when they're thinking now, because post-COVID, what's going to happen, and post-COVID would mean that, for almost a year or two, now things are going to be a little different, and anyway, social distancing and those norms would take their own time till this whole medical issue is sorted out. I mean, we get a vaccine and things like that, when work becomes quite the same as it used to be. But there are certain structural changes that have taken place. The work will be definitely different, and it's fast forwarded a lot of technological and those kind of changes that were anyways taking place. So what this COVID crisis has done is fast forwarded those things, and so therefore what would have happened in 2025 is now likely to happen maybe a lot earlier. So because this whole context of working from home, from away from office and things like that help people with those kind of skills, in fact, to work more easily rather than, where you were physically supposed to go to a particular place. And it particularly helps women, in fact, who are, more conversant with this kind of, skills, in fact, and moreover, they're capable of that and more competent at that. I think that's the good way. That's the way it has changed post-COVID. Otherwise, the world remains the same. The problem remains the same. In fact, if at all, it's worsened because the cost becomes a major issue with any enterprise that has to, this whole restarting of the economy is going to take a bit of a time to kind of get adjusted to it, forget about overcoming that problem. So I think in the meantime, the best is to use technology, and technology-based, entrepreneurs and technology-based entrepreneurship, your working calls will, I think, be the ones which will be most likely to succeed and be beneficial in the long run. And once you hone the skill, is going to stay for long, because that's the way the work was moving forward anyways. So I think this crisis has actually hastened a bit, so I think it's good to be.
So Fatma also here, Robin, I'll just add on one to put to life what Rajiv just shared. Today is a very good time actually. And I was just speaking to, this lady who heads, who's the CHRO in an organization, and she was sharing the CEO there has a mindset of, no work from home. Productivity zero hoti hai. That was his mindset earlier. But now in the past current 45 days where we are all, over Zoom and, conducting these virtual meetings and work is happening and all, she is so happy. She said, this shift has happened and there's so much of acceptance of women, working from home, which earlier she was struggling to get past, etc. She said, ab kya hota hai ki cooker ki whistle baj rahi hai. So you don't have the leaders grumbling. Ke, dekho, piche se, there's a child screaming and, somebody is walking in with, a toy or something. Obviously, we try and sanitize our calls. But then these things will happen work from home. And the point is, Fatima, that, acceptance is coming in. So I think it's a good time.
Right. Thank you so much. I mean, that perspective helps. Thank you.
There's a
good
question
time.
from
In fact, we
Ariba.
say that, what is good has to be good now. Yeah, much better.
There's a question from Ariba. Very, very interesting question. She said that you guys mentioned how women are good multitaskers, but isn't that itself a very unhealthy stereotype which allows society in general to expect them to manage the household and work?
But I think she's so right, because it's a left-handed compliment we pay to women, that they are almost all the time. So it's not a very, very good thing to happen, that emotionally they are better, so they can be tortured more. So I think I quite agree with Ariba that these kind of biases, these kind of prejudices are absolutely not going to hold good in the future, and they should not. The better, earlier we give them up, the better it is.
Yeah.
And I think this is also a good indication for men to pull up their socks and get
why-
their act together.
Yes.
Then do more multitasking. If
We
you
are, and this is the time. This is the time when everyone is quarantined and doing all kinds of chores along with work. So yeah, very good point.
Actually, these days, whether it is men or women, there's a lot of multitasking they do. You've seen how when you're at your laptop, you're also keying, you're typing, plus you're on the phone talking to somebody and sipping your coffee. It's all happening at the same time. But the way I see multitasking, I think is just a myth. If you look at your computer screen, you're working only on one window at one time. If you actually look at, in reality, you're working only on one window at one time. You're not working in multiple windows. You only have one window open at one time where you're working. Now, you may minimize that window, close that window, work on another window. But at one point of time, it's one.
Human brain was never meant to. Multitasking is to be done by machines, not men and women. So the point is that humans are not supposed to be multitasking at all, because unless you have that focus, you do it one time. Your brain is not structured to do more than 5 things at a time. I mean, 5 things, you can't even think only once, one particular thing. But as people have said that, you just can't handle more than 5 thoughts. And those two, they must be.
You may have multiple thoughts.
Yeah.
Multiple thoughts. Thinking is only on one.
Yeah. But therefore, there has to be subsections of the same thought.
Yeah.
So otherwise, it leads to.
It's interesting to see how the men are very determinedly, fighting this whole multitasking.
No, I think multitasking is a great thing.
No.
Men should also do that. And we do that. Again, like I said, on the phone, typing, sipping coffee, that's multitasking. But you have to learn to be good at it. You have to be good at it.
I was speaking in a
long way to catch up.
So you should also get away with the bias that if a man is speaking about something, he's speaking only representing men.
Okay. So
really, thank you all for creating this platform. It has given me an impetus to continue persisting on my enterprise. And actually the COVID, this quarantine has allowed me to do networking, e-networking, which sets me free from whatever self-consciousness I might have. So, and I have created a script shop. And right now, everyone is dying for content. So I've been working in a remote way with many script writers all over the world to content, to create scripts for feature films. So you have given me a boost. I feel like, this is fantastic.
By the way, Aditi, talking about feature films, on the 4th of June, I am speaking with Aruna Raje, the first woman filmmaker. On 4th of June at 11 a.m. So, block your time for that one.
Okay.
4th of June, 11 a.m. Aruna Raje is going to be live on Zoom chat.
And
have a chat with her.
And Robin, there's something on the 24th also.
Yeah, 24th, employee engagement.
Yeah.
So we are going to look at whose responsibility is it. Is it the employee or is it the organization's responsibility to keep the person engaged? So that's
what we are doing. Be around Ikigai of, that your context of contribution.
And just to let you know a little more, on the 27th, I'm doing another conversation with a writer. And we are going to speak about creative writing. Creative writing, what it takes, how do you prepare, how do you write creatively, whether it's fiction or non-fiction. Normally, people think that creative writing means it's fiction, but it can be non-fiction too. Then on 31st of May, we are doing a talk on single mothers. What it takes for a single mother to take care of her children, do her job, and flourish. So nurture her children, nurture her home, as well as do extremely well at what she's doing professionally. So those are the various talks that are scheduled. So with that, we are coming to a close of this absolutely wonderful chat that we have had. So thank you, Sharmila, thank you, Nusrat, thank you, Rajiv, and thank you everyone who's here on the call. Really loved it. If you want to speak to any of them, LinkedIn, get in touch with them. Okay, so thank you so much for your time. Have a lovely day. Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Bye,
Robin,
every day.
Nusrat, and everyone who joined the
Everyone,
call.
bye.
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 Bye-bye.